Teaching. Ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Science of Art and Life. My name is Adewale Walker Jr. Please review us, rate us, give us a 5-star, don't be a hater. Today we're going to talk about the science of art. We have a special guest, but before I do that, let's get our sponsors in. We got to pay these bills. This podcast is brought to you by A4 Capital Consulting. Let A4 Capital Consulting take your business to the next level. That's A4 Capital Consulting. Growing good business anywhere and everywhere. That's A4CapitalConsulting.com. And this podcast is also brought to you by Annadale Foot and Ankle. Let Annadale make your feet happy again. Don't live with foot pain. That's AnnadaleCenter.com for details. That's AnnadaleCenter.com for details. So today we have a special guest. He's a mentor. He's the former head of the art department at Long Beach City College. As far as I'm concerned, he's a legend. Everything I know about art, the tools, Illustrator, Photoshop, you name it, drawing techniques, I learned it from this man. Mr. Larry White, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you.
Sir, it's good to see you. It's always good to see you. One of the things for me anyway, like why I brought you on was we talked about different stuff like being an artist, how much you should charge people. But we've never actually talked about the science of art and all the things it takes for artists to do what it is, the incredible things that they do, sir. So I had a series of questions for you, and I figured, like, you know what? Who better to call for this than why do it myself when I could just let somebody else who's a better expert, who's a legend to me anyway, talk about it. That way it sounds more authentic. So, sir, I guess what we're going to go into the first question is, sir, in the science of art, are there design rules? Like, you know, obviously in school you taught me that you can do this, you can do whatever you want as long as you can get away with it. But there are still rules. So what are those rules in the science of art?
Well, you know, you've got, when we talked about this before, you know, the science of art, I talked about the fact that you've got design principles which are very much consistent across various art forms and types of disciplines, you know, design in architecture, design in automotive manufacturing. It's and there are specific rules in design that allow you to achieve success. And they're balance, harmony, you've got tension, compression, dominant groupings, subdominant groupings, asymmetrical balance, you know, all these different words to describe what a composition looks like. So you can look at any piece of artwork and then define it through the rules of design. This piece is static. It has right angles involved in it. Another piece may be dynamic with a lot of obliques and elements off-center, asymmetrical, things like that. So design is a way of determining whether or not you're building a good composition. You know, you can tell once you look at something, you can say, well, that looks good, or it doesn't look good. And if it looks good, you're going to find that it adheres to certain rules of design. I think one of the things that came to mind for me when we were talking about this was the idea of tension between two elements. And I don't know if you remember this in class or not, but I would do a thing on the blackboard where I would write a series of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, equally spaced, and you would see them as individual numbers. If you squeeze them together, you begin to see them as one number, 1,234. And as you begin to separate them out, they start to lose that association with one another. It's like stretching a rubber band. Eventually it's going to break, and they're not going to be associated with each other again. So you might have a 1 and a 2 next to each other. You see that as 12. And it's going to stay at 12 up to a certain point. And then after that, you're going to see a 1 and a 2. And they've lost that tension between them. So when you're doing a piece of work and you can have two elements that are separated but still have that tension between them, you know that they belong together, you can create a more exciting composition. The same thing is true with how things are grouped, or direction and flow, where you have elements that point in a given direction, and they draw your attention to another element on the page. And that other element may be the focus, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in the center. You have to incorporate design elements to get you to look at that thing. And that's really one of the basic components of design in art, is to get the viewer to see what you want them to see by incorporating those various rules.
That's interesting because I remember tension, man. It was I remember when I started at school, when I used to go to Long Beach City College, one of my problems I had was you have a bunch of things you got to put on the screen, because I would always you would always tell me, okay, out of all these things have to go on this page, but the structure of how you're putting them together isn't making any sense. So, which is funny now, because now that you said that, whenever I look at one of my drawings, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm adhering to the rules while breaking them at the same time too. Because I'm a wild artist, as you know. I like to just do what I want to do, and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And that's one of the things you taught me, is like, don't try to control what you're doing. Let it do what it wants to do, and you keep going with it. It's funny you said that, but when I think about in class or students that didn't listen to you, and then when you'd grade them, the grades would turn out to be a crappy D. And they'd be like, why did I get a D, Mr. White? Because you didn't adhere to the rules. I mean, I did give you some guidelines in class before I gave you the project, and I would see how that would infuriate you because people weren't listening. So you never said don't be creative. You just said there's rules about being creative. So that makes a lot of sense. So now we're going to go on to our next question, sir.
Well, let me say one other thing about that. One of my really good friends from graduate school, who was the art director for our Surfer's Journal magazine when it was founded, we were talking about good design and great graphic design work. And one of the things he said is, it's really important to know the rules of design and also know how to selectively break them. And the key there is selectively break them.
That would be me. I'm very good at doing that. I'm pretty sure. It's funny you said that. The first official Carjack Assassins book is coming out, and I broke every single comic book rule you can break. Because I was like, you know what? It's my book. I'm not going to adhere to rules and just, every time I would draw a page, I'd think about, Mr. White would be like, nah, you can break that rule. Because it's more like they're bending rules. They're not, it's art. So it's not like it's written in stone where you can't bend it. You can bend it. I mean, just don't break it, but you can bend it. Because by bending it,
the rules change.
Yes, they do. They change. And you said this before. Artists who do not adjust to modern times aren't going to be around. You know? We're not saying don't draw on pencil and paper. We're just saying that you can also do it too on computer and a tablet and whatever else people draw on. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, sir, the next question ties to that one. Do theories matter in the science of art, materials, and technology? I guess when I wrote that question, I was more thinking do theories matter when you're using those things, the materials, whether it's canvas, whether it's whatever, and then of course now everything is very technological. So that's the next question there, sir.
By theories, do you mean the use of those?
Yes, the use of those things, because obviously you said this. You came up with the idea of tension and science rules of design. But when I say theories, it's like a material. Can it be a theory? Technology, is it a theory? Because obviously we use Illustrator and Photoshop and InDesign and you name it. And then of course materials can be clay, wood, foil paper, whatever.
Yeah, those rules can. I think yes, definitely there are set sort of traditional uses of materials. And I suppose you could call that the theory of how they're done. That definitely should be challenged and broken. I've thought of pieces of work that I've seen where, the person's working with something and you go, no, you can't do it that way. You can't use aluminum foil when you're throwing pots on a wheel, It's clay. You can't have metal stuck in there. And then the question is, well, why not? And it just breaks the bounds and broadens the horizon. You're trying something different. You may find out that there's a good reason why you don't do throw pieces of metal into your ceramics when you're doing it. But, there also may be new results that you're able to come up with that, again, open up the field that you're in, that broadens the horizons. There's new ways of looking at things that you didn't see before because nobody had broken those rules. When I was going to graduate school, this was in the mid-'80s, there were traditional set rules of typography that were developed through hundreds of years of making type legible, easy to read, and understandable. And then there were these graphic designers, I think of April Greiman as one of the key ones that I looked at, who began, and David Carson is another one, moving type to the edge of the page where some of the letters would get cut off, and you're going, wait a minute, you can't do that. That's not right. But the thing, or making type so that it's really hard to read. When coming up, for me, the point of typography was legibility and understanding. But what these artists were doing was moving type out to the edge, making columns too narrow by traditional rules. But what it did is it forced you to concentrate on those elements and see the page in a different way. And, that's how art happens.
Right.
It makes you see things in new ways.
So art is a chance. So it's funny. So art is like you always tell me, art is like a chance. It's like you create an opportunity every time you create something new. So why is it that, this is a sort of a piggyback question, but why is it there's a lot of artists who are just rigid, man? They're just boring. Like, they are afraid to do something new. They're the people that always we only read newspapers. You can't read it on LA Times because I know you read LA Times every single day. So they're the dudes that we have to read it on a newspaper. We can't read it online. Why not?
Yeah. One of the things I was thinking about yesterday in terms of this is, science in art, and I was thinking about the fact that a lot of people, when they're working, feel like, what do you do? Well, I'm an artist. I make art. Actually, I don't think that's quite accurate. I think if you're an artist, you pursue art, and you do that through whatever medium you work in. And you do a lot of work, you create a lot of stuff, but all of it isn't art. Art only happens once in a while, and when you do it, because you go, whoa, that came from me?
You're blown away.
Whereas it's easy to keep making visual media. You can do 100 sculptures, but maybe only one of them is really art.
Right.
So I think as an artist, what you're doing is you're working, pursuing art, making sculptures or making paintings or doing illustration. And by that same standard, I think anything can be elevated to the level of art. You could be a plumber and do exquisite work,
right?
That is elevated to that level. I think of there's a great video on a Japanese sushi master, and everything he does is precise and measured and accurate, and he takes slicing fish and putting it with a piece of rice to the level of high art.
Wow.
It's that the way that you pursue the project, and then occasionally the magic happens.
Yeah, well, from what you're describing, this man has a passion for his craft. Even though it's sushi, he's a sushi master, it's still a passion because he has a passion for what he's doing. And that's where the bill comes in. That's an interesting answer. So on to our next question, the third question. Is it important for artists to stay within the proven demonstrated results or create new ways of showcasing art?
If you want to be a practicing craftsman, you stay within those rules and you And I think this might be a good example of the sushi master,
right?
You know, because he is staying within the system that he has developed, but to such a high degree that, you know, it sort of breaks that boundary. But truly, in my opinion, art is created when you break new ground, where you go where no go where no ship has
gone before. Star Trek up in here.
You know, the USS Enterprise.
Yeah, that's USS Enterprise, Captain Picard right there.
But yeah, so you've got craftsmanship is staying within your discipline, knowing exactly how traditionally you mix paint or you do this, and you get good results every time and very fine work. And art is where somebody says oil and water don't mix, and you say, well, what happens if I try?
And it works.
and you get a result that works for you. Exactly.
I do you think that people have a narrow mind, like, because oil and water, or as you say, don't mix, but then the artist, whether it's yourself or myself, when we somehow make it work, you know, they're thinking like, this is not going to work 100%. Well, what if I make it work 75%? That's working. And as long as it's better than 0%, it's like, it's more of a, I don't know. I think artists, and I learned this while we were in school. A lot of my classmates didn't understand. You weren't saying don't be creative, just don't be bounded by rules either. You see what I'm saying? Like, somehow find somewhere to live in between both places, because okay, you can see that thing on the internet, somebody's drawing that. Okay, you can draw that again, because you would tell us that. You would always give us a project about drawing something again. But then you would say, when you draw this, I don't want yours to look like that. Show me what you can do.
Make it your own.
Make it your own.
Make it your own.
That's what you always told me, and that's what I did when I created my characters in the Cards of Assassin universe. I remember you would tell me that all the time in class, and I wasn't into comics I was always into it, but you didn't know I was into comics like that when I was in school. So when I left school and these characters came around, I was like, oh my God, all the stuff you were teaching me started to apply to these characters. So I remember the first version of them, I drew it in CMYK. It looked like crap. I was like, oh, this is horrible. Then I was like, why do they look like this? I go to the settings, I'm like, oh my God, this is CMYK. What am I doing? This is why they look like that, because CMYK's color spectrum is shorter than RGB. I'm correct on that, right? So it's kind of limited. Yeah. So to me, that's what we mean by when creative ways of creating art. So that leads to our next question. What's more important, the science, the materials, or the technology of art? I know, right? It's a complicated question.
Yeah, because they're all interdependent.
Right.
You know, probably the physical stuff you're working with is probably the most important. But it also, you know, if you have no ideas behind it, it doesn't matter what materials or what tools you use. You know, you can have the most sophisticated tools in the world, but if you don't know how to use them, it doesn't make any difference. You know, you've got to bring all of those elements together. You may have an emphasis in one area or another, but you have to have them all. You know,
that's funny. So, like, you know, because I know in class, I remember when we first started the first day of school. I still remember this. We spent maybe a month learning the pen tool. You had us in that left corner. I want you guys every day for the next 1 month. That's what you said. We meet twice a week. Every time when you guys get here, turn your computers and go straight to the pen tool. Bezier curse handles. I mean, I think it was such a great way of teaching, because you were teaching us all three. As you said, all three is important, and to learn how to use the material first, right? The material being the pen tool, right? Because if you didn't know how to use the pen tool, you weren't going to be able to do anything on Illustrator. And you would say, hey, guys, I want you guys to draw with closed paths. And then you'd have the idiot in class who would draw with an open path. And then he's trying to color it. And he's, hey, Mr. White, can you come over here? And you're like, didn't I just tell y'all to draw with closed paths? What part of closed paths don't you understand? And for a lot of y'all who don't understand closed paths, that means you create a box. There has to be 4 points on that box, so that if you want to make adjustments, you can go in there and make adjustments. That's what you do in Illustrator. So that's what Mr. White means by the material. I guess the material would be that pen tool. So now we're going on to our last question, right? is it important for each artist to have a science of their own in their art? You know, to have a science to your art, I guess, is my question.
By science, I don't.
Like a technique,
I
or
mean,
because each artist is a scientist in
you,
its own way, I guess,
you
in their own
gotta.
way.
You have to have a vision. You have to have. I mean, to create art, you have to have something that you want to say, something that you want to create, and you may have a set of tools that you use that help define your work, but I wouldn't call that really a science as much as a philosophy or a theory. You know, this is my idea, this is what I'm trying to communicate, and these are the tools I'm using to do that. Beyond that, I don't think that the material of the tools are as important as your idea.
So your philosophy. So basically, maybe I should rephrase. I should have rephrased the question. Have a philosophy. Should each artist have a philosophy or theory of how they do their art or art in general?
Yes.
That makes more sense right there.
Yeah. If you're doing visual phenomena, there's got to be a reason why you're doing it. You know, it's not just the world needs more pictures of Mickey Mouse. You know, no, it doesn't. But if you've got Mickey Mouse doing something interesting, then maybe you're on to something.
Okay. So presentation. So like, because I remember you used to have us in class. One of the projects you gave us, you always give us a project about whether it was directly or indirectly, but it was sort of a biography. You would have us maybe pick a certain story of somebody and then create 5 or 6 things about them. And I know specifically, I did mine twice on Fela Kuti. I did the first one was terrible, but the second one, as I got better, I was able to apply the philosophies to it. And my drawing still wasn't as good, but I finally understood what you're trying to tell me. I remember I put a trumpet. I put that he was a revolutionary. I'm trying to remember. And then of course he was from Abeokuta, which is where I'm from, back in Nigeria, and stuff like that. And I remember so it was like, you basically was trying to teach us to put things together. But more importantly, the things that are together have their own place. Maybe this one's supposed to be on top. Maybe that one's supposed to be on the bottom. Even now when I do comic drawings now, go ahead, sir.
I was going to say what I was talking about at the very beginning with design, dominant and subdominant groupings and elements. Things that draw your attention. Is that trumpet as important as the political element? Do you create this political element and have the lines and direction of it lead you over to the trumpet, which is in another section? That sort of thing.
Man, that's pretty cool, and I think that's what. I guess, that's what this whole podcast was about, philosophy. If instead of even calling it science, it goes from a science topic to like, it is a philosophy is what it is. Because I mean, what's scientific about art is when you create it, then I think it's when it becomes a science. But it's a philosophy that creates those ideas. And then it's rules that you use not rules, a set of rules, boundaries, but then you bend them and then you create new rules. You know what I'm saying? So I guess that's what it's like. The whole thing is about being an artist. And I think that's why a lot of artists aren't as creative. Or you have a lot of artists, but then like 10 of them are great and the other ones are mediocre. You know what I'm saying? So, so that's what I want for today. Sir, man, it was great having you on. I seen your background there. You have your surfboard. That truck is still the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. I don't remember you ever driving that to school. Yeah, that's a 19, is that a 66?
60.
Oh, man, I was 6 years behind. Yeah, because I remember you had this one cool bike, too, you used to ride to school. I remember that bike, too, as well. And I know you still surf because I saw on your, I think it was on Facebook or Instagram, you joined Nations of Surfers or something like that. So Mr. White loves to surf, y'all, if y'all don't understand. You still get up at 6 in the morning, I think, used to surf?
I wake up at around 5.
So is it still 5 days a week, or is you change it down to 3 or 2, or what's the deal?
It depends on the surf. Like today there's waves, but it's really cold out.
Right.
And the water right now is freezing.
Oh, man.
So I went surfing yesterday.
Right.
And it was fun. It was great. But it was sunny and warm. The water was freezing, but the air was warm. So today I may go later, but it's pushing it.
It's pushing it. Is the morning surfing better than afternoon or evening for a certain reason? Or you just don't want too many people around, or what's the deal?
Usually the wind comes up in the afternoon and makes the waves choppy and messed up. But, like in art, every rule has an exception.
Right.
Sometimes it's better in the afternoons. You get an offshore breeze and
right.
everything turns wonderful. But usually, I'd say like 9 times out of 10, surf in the morning is going to be better than it is in the afternoon.
Okay, that's what's up. And now the bonus question. The Rams, because I know you've been heated about them. Man, they making you sick. What are they going to do in the playoffs, man?
I about died in that Ravens game. I mean, that was just, I think, it's all over. No, we come back, okay, great. And then we go down again. And then finally we won by 1 point. And the bottom line, here's what I feel about our team. We got some very great players. Really, really great. No doubt about it. Some of the best in the league. I mean, nobody's better than Aaron Donald anywhere on the field. But we're inconsistent. We'll play really great, and then we'll do some dumbass shit. Really, really bad. And then last week against the 49ers, we came ahead with less than 3 minutes left in the game. We scored a touchdown. We were up by a touchdown. All we had to do was just prevent them from making another touchdown. And with less than 2 minutes remaining, San Francisco went down and tied the game.
Man.
And there's no way in hell they should have done that.
Yeah,
that was the time. And so now I got I don't think we're going to go beyond this coming Monday with the Cardinals.
That's funny. So
I don't see us winning.
So do you think that you would rather trade back for Jared Goff because he took y'all to the Super Bowl? No. You don't want him back?
No. I mean, Matthew Stafford's made some really bad plays, but he's made plays that Jared Goff would never make.
Oh, man. So he's more of a system player, and Matthew Stafford is a player that can play out of the system.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah, I don't miss Jared Goff at all.
Well,
I mean, he's a good quarterback, but he's not as good as Matthew Stafford. And I thought Matthew Stafford could walk on water when he came here. And the first part of the season, he was unbelievable.
Right.
And then he, throwing interceptions in our own end zone, pick six, and it got scary.
I thought things would get better for him once he got Odell Beckham Jr. It would open up the offense. Open up the offense a little bit.
Yeah, it did. But now our big problem is our offensive line.
Man,
at the beginning of the season, he had time to set things up and throw. And if you watch the 49ers game, all he could do is drop back, and if he didn't get rid of it, he was dead.
He was done. Yeah. Let me tell y'all. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
And, you just can't win that way. You've got to be able to have time to make the play. And he hasn't been getting that. So where we're lacking is our offensive line is a real weak spot. And everything behind our defensive line is just, it's really bad.
Well, you got Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen Ramsey is great. But he can't play the whole field.
No, he can't. He can't play the whole field. Let me tell y'all something. Mr. White loves him some Rams. Since I've known this man, whether they were in St. Louis or wherever they are, they can move to space. He'll still be a Rams fan. He loves his Rams. So hopefully, Mr. White, they get this winning, because I know how important it is for you to have them get to the Super Bowl. You've been talking about it for a long time. They got to the Super Bowl, but then Jared Goff didn't do such a good job.
Right.
So
if we win on Monday, I'll feel much better. But I really don't see us. I don't see us beating the Cardinals again.
Yeah, but a playoff game on a Monday? That's so weird. I guess these are the times we live in now. It used to be weekend specials. Oh my God. Well, that's weird. Well, Mr. White, I want to thank you for coming on the show again, as always. As I stated before, y'all, this man is a mentor to me. Everything I'm doing that I'm able to do now is because of this guy right here. And sir, I know you love to surf, and your website's still the same. Is that Larry? Is that what's that? Artist@handyman.com, sir, or what is that?
Artisthandyman.com.
To check out the surfboards, and because y'all, this man can make a surfboard. That's right. He can make. You can always catch his posts on Instagram. He always posts a surfboard he's making from scratch too. So, Mr. White, I want to thank you for being here. Stay awesome. And I'm already in my head already. I've already figured out the next podcast we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about music. This is the man who put me up on Ray Charles, Percy Sledge, oh my God, you name it, old school Russell Mayfield. I mean, every old school Elvis Presley, the Temptations, you name it. This
Jesse
man,
Belvin.
Yeah, see? Next podcast. So you know what, sir? I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna call it the best of both worlds. You're gonna talk about your music from your time. I'm gonna talk about my music from my time, because we used to listen to. We'd go from Percy Sledge to Tupac, and then come back to Temptations, and then Bone Thugs and Harmony in class. So it was interesting. We're gonna talk about that next podcast. So I'm working on the next podcast for us to do that. That's gonna be real soon. So, sir, have a great day. Go surf and be safe. And Rams go win. They get the win. I think they get the win, sir. All right. Be optimistic. Yes, sir. Have a great day.
Take care, brother.
All right, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, y'all, and that concludes our podcast today. I want to thank y'all for listening, but first and foremost, let's thank our sponsors. This podcast is brought to you by A4 Capital Consulting, growing good business anywhere and everywhere. Let A4 Capital Consulting take your business to the next level. That's a4capitalconsulting.com for details. For details, go to a4capitalconsulting.com. And this podcast is also brought to you by Annadale Foot and Ankle. Don't live with foot pain. Let Annadale Foot and Ankle make your feet happy again. That's AnnadaleCenter.com for details. That's AnnadaleCenter.com for details. So, y'all, I want to thank y'all for listening. This podcast is produced, written, and directed by yours truly, Adewale Booker Jr. Please check out our website at sciencevisionshop.com or sciencevision.com. Please subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen, whether that's Amazon, Desert, Spotify, Apple. And you can also listen on our website at sciencevisionshop.com. Please check out our social media platforms at Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all at Science Vision. And please don't forget to review us, rate us, give us a 5-star. Don't be a hater. And as always, continue to aspire and achieve. Have a great week, y'all. Stay safe. Peace.